Scott, Channel 18, we all set to go?
Yes, Chief, let me just start the recording, and I'm sure Jamie will do the same.
Yep, Jamie, we're ready.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Town Administrator Search Committee for May 12th, 2020. And again, we are doing this all remotely. There is no public access to where we are. It looks like we're all in our own homes. Mike, I guess are you home, Mike?
No, at the office. I have a
Mike's at the office. Mike's at the office. All right. Well, we'll get going. I will make a note that we'll try and keep this meeting as short as possible. I believe the planning board is going to bump up behind us, and with due respect to them, we want to make sure that Channel 18 can continue on with that session too. I think we're going to be all set. We'll start with a call to order, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of our April 29th meeting.
So moved.
Motion made to accept the minutes of our last meeting. A second on that?
I second it.
Is there any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, we'll call a roll call. Mike?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Minutes are approved. The next is an update from me on directions from the Board of Selectmen. I don't have anything really new to report to the group or to the public on this. Linda's done a good job working with Bob Lawton to get the information out in the publications. That has been done. The email has been set up and confirmed with Anita, the town clerk, to receive applications. We have started to receive applications to that secure email that Anita Doucette is the town clerk is overseeing. On that, I just want to point out that final date for submissions on the applications will be May 22nd. And that gives a 3-week timeline for folks who are interested to return the required information. I will say that some applications have been received. I do not know exactly how many. In discussions with the town clerk, we felt it was appropriate that we would wait until let's call it May 23rd, if you will, for her to receive all the information. We won't piecemeal it. We're going to wait till everything comes in. And from that point, they will be recorded electronically. And she is also going to print out 5 folders for all of us to review. I believe the intent should not be to, split up the resumes. My intent, I think, is appropriate for all of us to review all the received applications and take it from there. The other, if I'll just look for consensus on that, I think that's reasonable and prudent.
Yeah.
I see shaking heads, so I think that's what we will do. We'll proceed that way. Anita will notify me when that information is available, and I will see that you all are given that information electronically and in printed copies. I think that's appropriate. I'm comfortable. I guess I'm old school. I like to have something printed in front of me, so she'll do that.
I like paper.
The other update on that would be to just review some of the discussion from last week on executive session in the lawyers in the law, and there was a case study, case precedent on this. To me, there's really very little that is subject to appropriately going into executive session. And that's okay, as long as we do it the right way. And going forward, I certainly will be looking for guidance if you think there's once we get into discussing, applications and resumes, I would hope that would allow us to have some executive session privileges. Linda?
Yes.
Okay, good. The other thing that we have to start thinking about for after May 22nd is preparing some questions to get to the candidates for them to respond to us during our interviews with them. So that's not something that has to be done today or tomorrow, but certainly let's think about how many questions and how long we want to give each candidate. I'm going to be looking for guidance on that too. Dan, I know you've had a lot more experience than probably most of us have in this, and I'm just, for discussion for the group, how long you think we might need for each candidate and how many questions. I mean, we don't have to decide tonight, but certainly from the group, I will be looking for guidance.
Chief, just real quick on that. Normally, I think the question is going to be how many do we get? And do we narrow the field with one sort of more preliminary, some kind of process that weeds us down to, let's say, 3 to 5 candidates, and then a more in-depth with that. So I think as we understand, are we going to know how many applicants are there, let's say, a week before? Or is it going to be on the 22nd or 23rd? We're going to find out the whole group.
No, I think you make a good point. Let me, like Friday, let me check with Anita and see if I'll email out. We have, for example, we have 4 applications, so we have 20. I think that's good. That would be good, Dan. I think that's, and if that's okay with the group, I can keep us posted once a week, if that's enough on that.
Yes.
Yep. Right now, I think we have 3 or 4. She wasn't too specific. We had a little trouble getting that secure email set up, but it's up and running the way we wanted it to, with help from Scott and Foster. So once we get more information, I certainly would be glad to get it out to you. So as far as the agenda goes, that's really all I have, unless I'll open it up to the group. Linda.
In the response from Michelle Redonzo, she did say that we could have one person of the group develop questions. Mm-hmm. And that development wouldn't have to be an open session. It was on our first page at the end. Mm-hmm. More than one, because then you become a subcommittee, and that's now under open meeting law. Really smiling. Yes, she knows all that. Mm-hmm. So throwing that out to the group, if we want to minimize conversation about interview questions, do we want to ask one member of the group? Perhaps we could all send our comments or our questions to that person. That person could then compile. We then can't discuss it outside of the meeting, but it might help us minimize conversation at our next meeting. And that's just a suggestion, Norm. And that was something that he gave us as a suggestion. So that is from Michelle.
So to back up a little bit. So you're saying that ideas would come from the 5 members, and that those ideas would be directed to one member to develop the questions that would go out to the candidates. Is that correct?
Yes, and then we would take that list and we would have to discuss the list in open session, but it might minimize some of the concerns that we have discussing questions back and forth, and the, how are we phrasing it? They give the answers to the test concept. Mm-hmm. So that may help alleviate some concerns.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, didn't we see prior to the last meeting, we had a list of questions that somebody had sort of, and I guess they were more generic questions, but I actually thought they were really good questions as sort of a starting point. And, the only thing I would add to that is just because of what we're going through now, something a little bit specifically targeted to managing through crisis and specifically through this crisis, which is both a health crisis and fiscal crisis.
I do have that list. To remind you, it came from the last Town Administrator Search Committee, so they were specific to that committee, not generic. But we could start.
I thought they were really good.
Yeah, Dan would, Chief, I'm going to Dan, would you really seem to have a feel for what you'd like to ask as a question in this emergency stuff. Would you like to craft that question?
Sure.
And Norm, I am happy to take all the suggestions and compile, being the happy clerk.
Thank you. So Dan will focus in on as a manager or administrator, excuse me, on the dealing with this type of crisis, whether it be, I mean, we can even go back to the tornado and the pandemic. Those are pretty unique situations.
And Linda, you want me to send that to you?
Please.
Yes. Yeah.
And if anybody has any other questions that they think they'd like to script, send them on and we can have them then in. We can then maybe make our conversation a little more efficient.
Sure. So we'll pass those on to you, Linda. Okay.
Right, and only Linda, right, to avoid
Yes.
any, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, right. That's the intent. Linda will compile the information.
Right.
Yeah, no reply alls. Thank you, Julie. That's a good reminder.
I had the reply all removed from my computer, so I can't do that anymore.
It is so easy to do.
It is.
I don't have anything else on the agenda for tonight. I think the next question would be, we're going to compile the questions, get the information to Linda. She will put those together for us to review at our next meeting. Is there anything else up for discussion under old business?
And I think the next meeting is when? Did we decide it was a week from today?
We did not.
No, I didn't.
No. Just tonight's.
So I unfortunately have a, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Are we thinking?
Next Tuesday or?
That's fine with me. Tuesday?
Did you say next Wednesday?
Well, normally we were Wednesday. We changed.
We
it
have
to
been
Tuesday.
Wednesdays.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with either. I'm just checking now.
Oh, you know what? Shoot. No, I'm on the Cape Cod 5 board and we have it says annual meeting next Wednesday night. Is there any way, could anybody possibly do Thursday instead of Wednesday next week? Sorry.
Yes.
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 Yeah, I can do Thursday, yeah.
That's
Let's
the
make 21st.
21st.
Same 5 p.m.
I like 5 p.m. This is working. Is this working for everybody?
Yep.
And then we keep Mike stuck in his office. Mike, you got to leave early, brother. You got to get out of there a little earlier.
Yeah.
And Chief, it was really helpful for him to send that email with the link, right? In the afternoon that day. So.
We'll do that. Scott's on it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Many
Scott.
thanks to Scott because I ask him for something and, he just sets the meeting times up and gets all the information out. He's being terrific, Chief.
There's a guy that makes me look good every day.
I'm a doer.
Do we have any new business other than the meeting time?
Yeah, Chief, a quick question as an agenda item for the next meeting, or if it needs to be an agenda item, a possibility to maybe just put some type of timeline together for us to, a goal to set, maybe to get a few names over to the board. I'm not sure if that's something, as we start getting into the beginning of June. And the other thing is the intent of a lot of these questions getting answered ahead of time. Are we still meeting candidates in person? Or via Zoom, I guess?
I don't know that I would really, it would be so valuable we should be doing this in person. That's going to be up to the governor and maybe after, another week or so. The 18th is when he talks about some things, and I certainly can check with Megan Eldridge, the health director, and see if she's got some thoughts. I'm gonna just say we should plan on doing this like we're doing this in virtual meetings. I think that's what we're gonna have to plan for. And I can work with Scott to figure out how we're gonna do that.
So after the candidates get the questions and the responses come back in, are we going to have any follow-up or second chance with any of the candidates, or are we going to then move just the answers off of the questions?
My assumption would be on this that after the 23rd, we'll get a list of all the candidates, go through their information and make sure that everything is filled out correctly. And from that, we would take a week to review those. I hope we could do it in a week unless there's 100 of them, and then come back and meet in this forum and discuss. Each of us will have our ideas for the top 10. I don't know, top 5. That's something, another thing we need to figure out here. I just made a note here for next meeting is that let's come up with, I will develop for the group to look at a timeline. And with that, I think it would be appropriate to, in that timeline, to say first round of reviews of the applications, second round, and maybe a third round to get it down to something we want to give to the selectmen. Quite honestly, I fully expect that the Board of Selectmen is going to say, we want to see all the applications. I just feel that that's going to happen. We will recommend, as we have. I try and represent all of you as best as I can in the most direct manner as I can, but we recommend, and we'll just see how that goes. They've asked us to recommend, and we'll do it. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised that they're going to want to see all the names. That's okay. They're the Board of Selectmen. But I think we should come up with some sort of idea of putting forth to them 3 names, maybe 5, because they're going to have to spend some time doing their interviews. So I think that's our charge. Comments on that?
Well, just going back to a timeline, which I think is a good idea, obviously, Mike, that thank you for saying that. But also just because we want to tie up everything so that when we do get to look at the resumes and such, that we've kind of finalized our list of questions. So should we put a time end date for getting those questions to Linda so that you have what you have and you go from there? Like today's what is today, Tuesday?
I think we should have all those questions ready to go and approved by this committee by May 22nd.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, right. So really we should have those questions to Linda so she can work on the finalized thing and we could talk about them technically to whatever extent we needed to by Thursday's meeting, the 19th. So that really only gives us like a week. So
Yep.
Say get everything to Linda by just say, I don't know, a week from today, Linda, is that good?
Today's Tuesday. Even if you got it to me by Wednesday, that still gives, looking at my calendar, I can block out time Thursday morning then to compile.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Then we can talk about them on that night. Okay.
Dan?
Yeah, Chief, the only thing I would add is that depending on the number, I think to Michael's point about the process and the time frame, one of the things we should put on the agenda next week is the process. Because if there's a huge number of applicants, we're going to want sort of an objective screening process where all of us have the opportunity to sort of score and grade each candidate and then take an aggregate and discuss the ones, if somebody says this person's a 1 and somebody else says it's a 5, we're going to want to discuss it. But if everybody says this person's a 2, there's not a lot of discussion. So I think that depending on the number, there's a great way to sort of do a preliminary screening. If we only get 6 interviews, that's easy, or 6 applicants. But if we get 100, we're going to need to be very organized, setting up a grid and a scoring process and everything else.
Linda?
I agree with Dan, and the way I've seen it done in other places is everybody looks at the resumes or the applications and says, gotta talk to this person. No way am I talking to this person. And the gray area in the middle, that is like, maybe, maybe not. Because you're right, Dan. If 5 of us say this person is in the gotta talk to, then it's a gotta talk to. There's no conversation. And if we all say no way, then there's also conversation. It's really that group in the middle, or when people have really divergent. So I think Dan, maybe something as simple as that, just those 3.
I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
The other thing that we'll need some time for in also a process is checking references. That could take a little bit of time. Now, I would assume if, Dan, to your point, if we get 100, I'm not sure I want to call 100 or 300 references. We're going to have to, in process on this, you go through the resumes first and get down to a point where we're comfortable with 10. Let's say, I'm just going to use the number 10, then check references. Or do you check references on everybody that files? Help me out.
Oh, no, you check references really on the final.
Gotcha.
Let's say get it down to 3 to 5 and then on them really.
And that would be part of the final process.
Without overcomplicating it, but there's 5 of us. And if we had a system 1 to 5, if we get a candidate that we all think is extraordinary, that's an aggregate 25. If we have a candidate that we all think is a 1, that's an aggregate 5. And what we could actually do is say for any candidate that's more than 15, we'll take it to the next round, or if that's more than 18. And then always leave room if somebody, again, if I feel there's somebody who's a 5 and the rest of you feel it's a 1, I think, when you look at sort of that range, sort of the standard deviation, if somebody's way outside of it, then it merits, why? Why did I think it was a 5 and you all thought it was a 1? But otherwise, there's a very objective scoring system. 3 is a good number, Linda. We may want to make it a little bit more than 1 to 3. But I think but again, there's no reason to do that if only 5 people apply. So we got to sort of be ready to choose a process depending on what the draw is here.
How about we just think about if plan A would be we get 100 resumes and we use the scoring 1 to 5 and we all score them and then add them up and see what the numbers had. Plan B is if we have 20, under 20 resumes, that's the one where we don't need to get as 1 to 5. So maybe it's going to be, but at least we've talked about that we're going to do this or we're going to do that. I think we have an idea of what to do. And I like the 1 to 5. And you just add them up and see where everybody racks out in the applications.
In that previous information that we had given to us from previous administrative searches, is there information on there on a scorecard?
That's basically what they did.
Okay, that would be helpful. Okay.
I have a
Anything
question,
else?
which is, I've been involved in searches where the applicant has been asked to provide this piece of information, this piece of information, and this piece of information. And in one of the, and consistently, if someone was supposed to put in 3 pieces and they only put in 2, they got put in the effectively wastebasket because they didn't follow direction.
Absolutely.
Are we going to follow something like that? Because one of the things that is in that ad is you have to put in 3 references because to try to expedite this process, to have to chase people down for references, and this just kind of cuts some time out. If they don't provide a piece of information, are they going to get put in the naughty pile?
My opinion, 1 of 5. There's a couple of things. You follow precisely what the ad asks for. And secondly, you better spell our names right. I've been surprised at how many applications I've seen come through. I've done it a few times. A letter of intent or whatever, they don't spell my name right. Well,
hey, Chief, usually what they do is they take the E off the end of your name and put it on the end of my name.
There you go. Right.
Well, I'm just going to say,
I've had resumes where people misspelled the company's name where they're working.
Well, you're gone.
well, as my entire time on the board, and even when I was chair, my name was never spelled correctly. So it's the U there. So I'm just saying, it's, that I kind of feel bad on somebody because people think the obvious, but I agree. Directions are directions and you pay attention to detail. But trust me, my name won't be spelled right, guaranteed.
If the folks are on top of things, they'll be watching these meetings. So we've given away a couple answers to the test already.
That's true.
Could I ask one other question about the reference thing? in this day and age, and this has really changed in the time I've been in business, you list a reference assuming that if the person listed is called, they're gonna actually be forthcoming. In this day and age, actually the applicant should make sure that the references are aware that they may get a call. So one of the things when we ask for references is we ought to say, please provide references that are willing to have a discussion with us. Because very often in this day and age, references won't talk because of the liability.
Oh, yes.
Well, so you're saying that, if I was going to apply for a job somewhere, I would ask someone, will you be a reference? Can I use you? But you think that even some of those folks don't want to talk?
No, if you ask that question, Chief, then that's exactly what I'm getting at. But a lot of times somebody will just list a reference, never clear with that person that there'll be a reference. And then it's an awkward moment because you call the person and very often, unless they know your call is coming, they're not going to want to be forthcoming. So we ought to add,
And that tells you something about the applicant.
Yeah, it does.
It's a big thing that tells you about that applicant.
Sure. Well, there's another answer to the test. Anything else under new business? I don't know. I'm used to saying, is there anything good in welfare? But I think we're doing pretty well. I'm glad the sun's out.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Julie and I can get down to the dockside for a burger and a beer. That's an inside joke. And we'll look forward to talking to you at our next meeting, and we'll get all that information to Linda. Does anybody have anything else to say?
Actually, Chief, I just have one more, just a quick question. I'm not sure if I maybe phrased the other question not correct, a little confusing. Once we par candidates down 3 to 5, 5 to 7, and the questions are sent out, responses come back in, are we going to have the opportunity to see each candidate through some type of medium, whether it's Zoom meeting or in person, or will the answers to those questions be the end of any communication with the candidates?
I think that's up to us.
Yeah, just curious more to see what type of questions you may frame and what you may keep back for a in-person chat with them. Or throw it all out there and see what
I would be looking for direction and consensus from the group on that, Mike. That's an excellent question.
I'm not looking to slow this down anymore or drag it out anymore. I just don't. If this list of questions will be our only opportunity, then, just knowing that ahead of time versus knowing you may have another crack at, a follow-up or asking them something.
I think a reasonable assumption would be that we would go through the candidates with the questions, and then we would have a round 2 with them again, and maybe a round 3 to get to a point where, if you call this in person, face-to-face, and then from there, we would hopefully develop our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, great.
I would say yes, certainly more than one opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about this medium, as unsatisfying as it is relative to some of the issues, is inviting somebody back for a follow-up is easy because they don't have to travel. So in some ways, having it be more of an iterative process is easier using this. Although I don't like this medium. I look much better in person.
Oh, well.
I don't.
Some of us have
I'm
the
not
Facebook
going
video.
anywhere with that.
Is there anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
And we'll just do a roll call on that. Mike?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you very much, and this will conclude this meeting. We're all set to go off the air.